Hello, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Welcome into PTN Extra. As always, I'm Evan Kamiko. That's Mike Irwin. Mikey, we got a lot to talk about. It is Thanksgiving, so we'll do a little bit of a fun Thanksgiving segment coming up after the break. But first, let's talk about the more pressing event this week. Senior Day for volleyball is tonight, so make sure if you can get over to Barnhill, do that. But let's talk about basketball. Coach Cal, in their first real marquee test of the season, we saw Baylor a couple of weeks ago, but this is prime time. This is CBS tomorrow on Thanksgiving. Arkansas and Illinois going to follow a Bears and Lions game that might be really, really bad, and maybe people will switch over to the basketball game because of how bad the Giants and Cowboys game is going to be at 4. What's your initial thought on this game?
First of all, I think there'll be about as many Kentucky fans. If there was a way to get numbers, I think there'd be about as many Kentucky fans watching this as Arkansas fans, because all they've been doing is just running. There was an article today, and it was written for, I think it was a national writer, but it was written for Razorback fans. But there were more Kentucky fans posting in that, and it was before the Maryland Eastern Shore game, in which Arkansas scored a lot of points. But there were all these negative statistics, all these problems they were having, including John L. Davis, who couldn't hit threes, and now we know that he can hit threes. But that's going to be interesting. And then I think it's going to be an interesting kind of side story here, because you've got these two brothers, Zvonimir Ivisic and his brother Tomislav. Yeah. And I didn't even know he had a twin brother until a few weeks ago when he just casually mentioned it. It hadn't come out. And at the time he said, well, he's older than me, and he was always, the focus of everything, but he said I was a better player. And then he reaffirmed that in an interview, I think yesterday. He said I was better than him. This is the first time they'll be going against each other as opponents. And so it's interesting to compare their stats. Tomislav is averaging 15.5 points a game. Zvonimir, 12, okay. Rebounds, he's almost doubling. Tomislav, 8.7, Zvonimir, 4. Block shots, Zvonimir's better at block shots, 17-9. Here's the real difference between those guys. Zvonimir Ivisic is averaging 56.9% shooting on 3-point shots, and his brother is what you would expect from a 7'2" guy, 28%. Right. So I think that's kind of an interesting side note. When you start comparing these two teams statistically, and that's all you can do really, except that they do have common opponents. But I would start off saying they have the same 5-1 record. Arkansas lost to Baylor. Illinois lost to Alabama 106-87. Got clocked pretty good in that game. But the two common opponents, Little Rock, they beat Little Rock 92-34. And we know Arkansas struggled a little bit before pulling away 79-67. So you're saying, ooh, what about that? Right. But then Maryland Eastern Shore, they blew them out 87-40, but Arkansas beat them 109-35. So, I mean, I don't know. You start looking at stats. Illinois is averaging 89 a game, Arkansas 81, but Arkansas shooting a better percentage both from the field and from three-point range. They're about the same on assist-to-turnover ratio. It looks like Illinois may be a little stronger rebounding team, but I think Arkansas has played a tougher overall schedule. I looked at the teams they played, and I think Arkansas' schedule, Maryland Eastern Shore was the first team they played that I thought was really not very good. The rest of them may not have big names, Pacific, right. But I thought they were all pretty good teams. And Cal said that. He said, I scheduled teams that I knew were going to challenge us a little bit. But you're right. This is the first time they really go up against a team that's similar to them, and it's on a big stage. You can't get any bigger, honestly, when we're still in football season, because this is a basketball game right in the middle of what you normally would say would be people watching football. Yeah, and it's really interesting that you mentioned, again, I think the Ivisic matchup is kind of a microcosm of these two teams because they're very similar and they're very different. Obviously, Brad Underwood's been in Illinois. He's been in Champaign for 20-plus years, has taken Illinois to, a numerous amount of Big Ten title games and all the things that he's done. Finally got to the Elite Eight a couple of years ago. And then you look at Arkansas, and obviously you're new with Coach Cal, but these teams are a little bit similar. Illinois lost a lot in the transfer portal last year. They brought in a lot of guys, freshman Kasparis Jakushonis. I'm going to try to pronounce that right. Very hard to pronounce, kind of leading his side of it in the Illini, 12 points a game, 35% from three. And Boogie Flan leading the Hogs, 17.2 points per game, at least the guards of the Hogs.
I'd say Adu is a little bit of everything for me, more of a forward than a guard. But obviously you have Adu. But these teams are very similar, where there's a lot of new faces on them, and they're kind of like right next to each other, right? Arkansas 81.2 points per game. Illinois, yeah, there's 89 points per game, but again, two similar kind of styles of teams. And when you look at their postseason projections, Arkansas is a 6 seed, Illinois is at a 7 seed, both from Joe Lunardi in the Newark side of things. So they both match up maybe pretty quickly as that 6-7. But again, I think it's really two teams that, like you already mentioned, have a lot of similarities, and that all kind of boils down to this Vicic kind of matchup that when asked earlier this morning, Big Z was like, yeah, I want to kick his beep, right? Like it was really funny, and to hear about Big Z, they've never played before, like you mentioned. It's something really cool, and to get to do that on a national stage tomorrow will be really special. If Arkansas wants to win, Mike, what do they have to do? What's one area that you've been most concerned with so far?
They've got to shoot.
Yeah.
They got to shoot like they did the other night. And, the defense will be better. But here's what happens when they're hitting from three is especially. It draws there's no more of this zone stuff.
Yeah.
So it draws you out, and then their quickness and their ability to penetrate comes back into play. Mm-hmm. And it was watching a totally different team when they hit, because and this is a contagious thing, when one guy starts hitting threes, our three-point shooter's now hitting three. Yeah, I will too.
Right.
And so a lot of them, started. And then Carter Knox, he's just kind of been hanging around on the perimeter. We've heard, this is a really good player, but then he scores 21. So you're saying, okay, maybe if you got, instead of two guys you count on every night, maybe there's three. And then Brazil came back, and he didn't do a lot, but you've got two big guys now. The thing that I'm still just not sure about is, what's going on with Adu?
Yeah.
Because Cal said about 2.5 weeks ago, he said, well, he's healed, but he's still going to have to work through some pain. Well, apparently he doesn't want to work through the pain because he hasn't played since, and he had played before that. So maybe there's a cautious thing going on there. But to me, if you want him ready for SEC play, doesn't he need to start playing now as we go into December?
Absolutely, and that's the big question, right, is how long can you give him of a leash? Because, again, when you look at that December schedule, and it's going to start with Miami and a really good Jim Larrañaga team, and then you're playing Michigan, and that would be really ideal, in my opinion, for Jonas Adu to come back, because you're going to face Vlad Golden. He was a former teammate of John L. Davis at FAU again, and Dusty May, his old coach as well, who's at Michigan. So that's really the game that I think I have my eye on for when you'd like to see Jonas to get back, because that's going to be the best team that the Hogs face in December when it comes to in the paint depth for Michigan and the way that they have the big bodies like Golden and et cetera. But really, that's something that's interesting, is because we keep seeing it, right? And it's only a matter of time again. Then you start SEC slate with Tennessee, who outside of Auburn looks like the second best team in the entire league. So there's a lot of questions, I think, that come into play for these two teams. And one of the things that I actually am curious about too, again, because the similarities between Illinois and Arkansas is they're both kind of in that same spot in the conference. They're kind of right on 4. If you look at Illinois, you have Purdue, who's probably going to be the best team again, as much as I hate to say it. Indiana, who, quite honestly, after today has lost to Louisville, did not look anything like a Big Ten contender. Michigan State's up there. And then you have Illinois, and it's kind of the same with Arkansas, where you have Tennessee, Alabama, and Auburn as your top 3 teams in the SEC. And then you have Arkansas, so they're kind of just sitting at the same spot right around 4. But yeah, I think Jonas Adu, it's going to be a lot on when can he get back and how early that is. And quite honestly, Z didn't say anything this morning about it, and there was really nothing about it earlier this week. So that's the question.
Well, and another interesting thing to me is the way the media is reacting to Cal, because I don't think overall I don't think they have him figured out yet.
Yeah.
For instance, there was a lot of talk when he made that reference the other day. Do you guys listen to what I say? I see him as a guy that just kind of throws stuff out there. I don't think he was really criticizing. Some people said he's saying that basketball doesn't mean as much to the local media, to Arkansas media, so we don't ask good questions because we don't really care.
Yeah.
I don't think he was doing that. I just think he was messing around. But there was a lot of confusion initially after that Maryland Eastern Shore game the other night, because he didn't come to the press conference, and he was supposed to do his radio show, and they've been encouraging fans to stay in the arena and listen to the radio show, and a lot of them did, and then he wasn't on it. And everybody was like, what happened? Well, the explanation was he went over to start working on Illinois. And they were like, what? Well, I was home watching because that wasn't one of my work days.
Right.
And as soon as the Arkansas game was over, I flipped over. And Illinois was on TV, you know, and you were catching probably a third of the first half. So I think that's what he did. I think he went straight to the nearest TV and started watching that game live.
And not for nothing, again, when you beat an opponent by, 109 to 35, is Cal really going to say anything interesting? And I mean this in the nicest way possible.
Exactly.
Is he really going to say anything that you're going to be like, man, I want to latch onto that and take that after, that Chin Coleman or Kenny Payne can't do, or the players after the game? In my opinion, after the game, I'm more curious about what the players have to say because they're on the floor, they're seeing it, especially in a big blowout. We haven't heard from Carter Knox pretty much all season, and Monday was the first time we got to do it. We also heard from Billy Richmond, I believe, afterwards as well. So that, to me, is more pressing of like, hey, let me hear from these guys who media hasn't spoke to all year. And, you know, there hasn't been a lot of media in the beginning of the season. We didn't have a media day like we normally do. So I think I think us as media members, we're a little bit more lax on that of like, there's nothing Chin Coleman or Kenny Payne can't say that Cal would say after the game. And maybe it was a little quicker of a press conference like you. I was off on Monday. So something to keep an eye on.
It's kind of a contrast to Pittman, who doesn't allow his assistant coaches to talk once the season starts. He claims he got that from Kirby Smart. I wish he would go back and revisit that. I mean, how many times have you had a question for Bobby Petrino?
Yeah,
Travis Williams. You know, you want to be able to ask him certain things. Well, you can do that because Cal puts his assistant coaches out there a lot. So I like that.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm being shortchanged because he doesn't show up every time.
And even the same with Muss last year. You know, when we wanted to speak to Keith Smart after Bob Knight passed away, we weren't able to. Muss said only, you know, he did media every single time. So it's nice to get refreshing and different faces. But again, we can only read into so much. And again, people at home can only read into so much because no one really knows what's going on, which is the interesting thing. Last question about Illinois before we head to a quick break, Mike. For this Arkansas team right now, who's the player that's got to step up?
Well, man, I still think that John L. Davis is important. Obviously, Fland, you know, he's the point guard. He's got to play well. I think Ivisic has got to play well. That's going to be who's going to win that battle between the two brothers. But to me, if John L. Davis is what we thought he was coming in, and he can do it 2 games in a row, I thought he totally changed this team with his shooting. So I'd go with him.
That was the Nelly Davis that fans hoped to see 6 games ago, but getting it 6 games in isn't the worst thing in the world when he's got to adjust to all these things. So Arkansas and Illinois tips off tomorrow at 3 p.m. Myself, Alyssa Orange, and Jacob Morris will have live coverage from Kansas City. Should be a really fun one. Mike, don't go away. When we come back, we're talking football and being thankful about things. PTN Extra returns in just a second. All right, welcome back into PTN Extra. Evan Camico alongside Mike Irwin on this Thanksgiving Eve. And Mikey, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, we got to be thankful for stuff. Every year, my family and I, we'd sit around the table and everyone would say one thing that they're thankful for. So instead of fully deep diving into this football game, let's kind of do a different kind of strategy with this. What's 3 things, Mikey, that you're thankful for about Arkansas football? A lot of negativity going on at home, all of that. What's your first one? Then I'll go.
I got to go with Petrino just because when they announced that he was back, I loved watching his play calling, and I was very interested to see how he would handle all this. Now, I've told people he's not going to have the maximum impact. He's not a jump out of the gate guy. The longer he's somewhere, the better I think his offenses get. But it has been interesting to watch him call plays. For instance, I thought in this last game against Louisiana Tech, Arkansas, that was their strength. That was Tech's strength, is defense. And I think he started off trying to run the ball, and it wasn't working. But he was very patient. The defense was allowing them to be patient. They didn't have to take a lot of chances, try to throw deep or whatever. And just watching him just come back and try this and then try that, and then it suddenly in the second quarter, the dam broke. And all of a sudden everything's working, and they're running and they're throwing. So I would say he's one. Okay, 2. Again, these are all controversial, I know, but I've loved
things that fans at home should be thankful of.
I've just enjoyed Taylon Green. I know all the problems he's got. I understand that he loses focus, I understand there's all these head-scratching plays that he doesn't make or whatever, but he's fun to watch when he's on. You know,
Yeah.
Everyone, it's amazing to me. I kept reading after this game that he had a bad game. He had a bad first quarter. If you go from the second quarter on, he threw 2 touchdown passes. He ran for 2 touchdown passes. One of them was on a critical 4th down situation.
Right.
He not only got the first down, he scored a touchdown. Then he scored in a goal line situation. He's just fun to watch. He's unpredictable. He reminds me of Matt Jones. He's not as consistent as Matt Jones. But I just keep thinking, okay, if he comes back next year, maybe we're going to see him without a lot of these issues.
Yeah, I think there's a good likelihood he comes back. Let's save your number 3. Let me give my 2 first so we get caught up even and even. My number 1 thing that Hog fans should be thankful for is Landon Jackson. First of all, he could have gone to the draft last year, would have been a mid-round grade. Probably he'll still be a 2nd to 3rd round draft pick this year. But again, he's having a career year in most of his numbers. 6.5 sacks, that ties last year is career high. 1 forced fumble, 27 solo tackles, and 5 pass defended. Those last 3 stats are all career highs, so Landon having a great year. And it started out slow, and Hog fans were a little worried, oh, where's Landon? What's the production? Why isn't he doing anything? He said, the numbers will come, but I got to keep putting my head down and working. I don't care about my numbers. Now we've seen the numbers are finally back there.
Yeah.
That's the number 1 thing that Hogs fans should be happy for, because he's getting pressure, allowing the defense to do their job. So it all comes together. Landon Jackson is the anchor of that defense. He's been the last 2 years, and he'll continue to be through the bowl game. Number 2, a little bit off of Talon as well. I've got the Arkansas offensive line. That's the thing that I think Hog fans should be thankful for, specifically the transfers in Fernando Carmona Jr. and Addison Nichols. First of all, they provided an energy that I think was really missing from this Hog offensive line, not only in personality, but also in toughness. They needed to be tougher from last year. We saw all the numbers were down. This year, the Arkansas O-line is averaging 2.91 sacks a game, 32 total, and that's not even including how many are on Talon trying to scramble and extend plays versus just a genuine sack. So let's say that number is probably closer to 2.5 sacks per game. But Arkansas is the number 3 rushing offense in the SEC, 185 yards a game, and also the 34th in college football. Last year, those numbers were dismal, not even close to what it is this year. So everyone knew it was no secret Sam Pittman needed to get back to his bread and butter. So Hog fans should be thankful for those O-line transfers who came here, trusted Sam Pittman, and now they are again amongst the best line in the SEC. All right, Mikey, your final thing that Hog fans should be thankful for this Thanksgiving.
Andrew Armstrong.
Oh, I love it. I was going to go there.
Okay, look, here's this guy, and if you go back to when they were recruiting and when they came up with him, there was a lot of talk about Pittman and what was wrong and all this stuff. And this is going back to 2022, I think it was. And people were saying, well, they lost Traylon Burks, so they got to get another Traylon Burks. And I thought, and then when they got him, I thought, what are you talking about? He's from A&M Commerce? What is that? I remember asking myself, is that even D1? Is that D2? It turns out it is D1.
Yeah.
Southland Conference, I think. But I thought there's no way he's going to struggle. Well, he came in and played really well, but this year he has really just carried them. And Talon Green throws it to him all the time.
Right.
Talon Green tends to throw high anyway, and he's just a guy with his hands are just like, I don't know, it's got flypaper on it or something. You just whack.
Like sticky glue.
Yeah, and I remember one of these games. I can't remember which one it was, but he got hammered early. And it was like they're sending a message to him, and he may not be back. Well, he came back and had a great game. I mean, he's tough.
Yeah.
I like his mom, too. We interviewed her on TV, and she's a great lady. So when you think about guys like that who might come in for 2 years, and a lot of them, the fans don't even remember them because they come in for 2 years and then they're gone. And are they really Razorbacks or not really here? He's from the outside. I think he came in here and became a Razorback. And I like those guys that do that, that from the outside, they're not born in this state. Because a lot of guys come in here and I don't think they might play well, but I think they'll leave, might not ever come back. It's not a big deal to them. I think he came in here and found a home. And
we really got an up-and-close look at Andrew Armstrong at SEC Media Days. It was the first time really he did a lot of media. Didn't do a ton last year, but when he was in that room, he was light up. You can see the enjoyment in his face, how much he wanted to play for Arkansas, how much he wanted to have a good season this year. Mikey, trivia question for you. There is one player in the SEC who's averaging right now 100 yards per game. Who is it?
Is it him?
It's him. It's Andrew Armstrong. So I think Hog fans should be thankful for that. I completely agree. Plus the matchup this weekend between him and Luther Burden should be really interesting. Burden is 13th in yards per game in the SEC. Andrew Armstrong is 1. So that's a really good one. I liked it, but I'm going to go a different direction with my third, and mine's going to be weather. And I know this is a little off-brand for football talk, but when we look at this game this weekend, and really in general, Jacob Morris and I were having a conversation over the weekend with Alyssa of, hey, we've had such great weather the last 2 years. It hasn't really been cold, especially this year. It hasn't really been rainy or anything. The worst game, I think, was Ole Miss, and it was like upper 50s, low 60s, overcast, not great, maybe a little sprinkle right before the game. So that was the worst game. So I'm thankful for weather. The weather's been great so far for all of our football games except this weekend. When it is projected to snow, Weather Channel said 70%, or Dan Scoff and Zach Gilday both said it's going to snow this weekend. So the weather, I think Hog fans should be thankful we've gotten good weather, because there's a lot of debate whether or not we're in the Midwest or we're in the South. I think it's the South. I'd never heard about it snowing in Arkansas before I got here last year. But again, this weekend, it's been great weather besides snow this weekend, which will be a really big challenge, I think, for the Hogs, who the only one who's really played in snow is Talon Green.
Well, I'm not sure how much it'll snow. I mean, it sounds like not a lot. It's not going to be a blizzard.
Yeah.
But I did have a fan call me and was talking to me, and he thought I could answer this question. He says, when did the last time Arkansas played in snow? And I don't remember. I'm sure it's happened at some point, but I can't recall.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
That's, I mean, for you, especially, you've been here a very long time. I grew up in the snow, so I'm used to the cold weather. But for Arkansas fans, and especially you did not remember any snow games, that's interesting.
When I was a kid, it happened all the time, because most of the games that were on TV, if you go back to the mid-'50s, college games was all about teams in the Northeast.
Right.
And especially late in the year, you'd see all these blizzard games, and then you'd see these where you couldn't see the yard markers, and they'd just be out there running around. You're like, why? What's going on? And the thing I remember about those snow games was that the stands would be full. I mean, people just sort of understood that's what was going to happen, you know, and they came dressed for it, and it was cool. I think now, if it's like that, I think you may not have a full house at a lot of games, because I think people don't, if they got a choice, I don't think I'll go to that game, because a lot of them have their wives with them too.
Right.
I can imagine the wife going, come on, we'll stay here and watch it on TV, and maybe not, but I think that's one of the big differences I see in college football from when I was a kid to today. You just saw a lot more snow games on TV. Yeah,
and snow always plays that factor, and I think that's a really good point. Brady Cook said earlier this week they're expecting a full house for this game. It's senior day. They're honoring all of their Mizzou seniors. What happens if it snows? Are the seniors going to show up? We're in the SEC. Usually you'd think fans don't go to snow games in the SEC, but Mizzou might be a Big 12 team. I don't know.
Yeah,
we're going to leave it there.
They're probably used to it more.
Definitely. It's not us Big 10 folk who are, go to it all the time and are very used to snow. I've walked in finals in snow before. So should be a really good time. Very thankful for weather. Mikey, anything else you're thankful for before we go?
I just thankful to be still working at my age. This is fun. It's fun to do this.
We always have a good time on Wednesdays. This, Mikey, unfortunately, is also our last PTN Extra in the football season. So thank you all for hanging out with me and Mike in season as we hold down the fort on Wednesdays. For the final time, at least for the two of us, that's Mike Irwin, I'm Evan Camico. Thank you for watching PTN Extra. Arkansas and Missouri kicks off at 3 o'clock. Or 2:30, I should say, on the SEC Network. Should be a really fun time. Arkansas looking to get a win in Columbia. Battle Line rivalry this Saturday should be a good one. For Mike Irwin, I'm Evan Camico. Thank you for tuning in to PTN Extra. We'll see you all right back here next Wednesday.